In the early hours of September 29, 1990, a young assistant football coach was shot dead in a fast food parking lot in New York. What followed was one of the most devastating wrongful conviction cases in American history. 3 innocent men, coerced confessions, hidden evidence, and decades stolen from their lives. It would take over 30 years and 2 separate retrials before the truth finally came out. This is the story of the Healey murder and the men the system failed. Joseph Healey was 25 years old, working as an assistant football coach at Hofstra University on Long Island, New York. On the night of September 28, 1990, Healey went out drinking with 2 friends, David Shepard and Tim Mahoney. At their final stop, they met 2 Hofstra students, Stephanie Shealy and Kristen Beaker, too intoxicated to drive. The group decided to walk back to campus together. Hungry, they searched for food, but the pizza parlor they wanted was closed. They settled for the drive-through window at a nearby Arby's, sat down on the curb outside, and began to eat. It was an ordinary night. Within minutes, it would become a crime scene. Nearby, a woman named Cynthia Louis Saint was walking with a friend toward a payphone. She noticed a gray car pull up on a side road behind the Arby's. Inside were 2 black men. She got a clear look at the driver, just a few feet away. Moments later, those same 2 men approached Healey's group. One shouted, "You have 3 seconds to get up." The second man, standing near some bushes, yelled, "Just do it." A gunshot rang out. Joseph Healey was killed instantly. The 2 men fled to their car and disappeared into the night. The entire incident lasted less than 30 seconds. Detective Richard Wells of the Nassau County Police Department led the investigation. Composite sketches were created from witness descriptions. A $15,000 reward was offered. Thousands of posters were plastered across the region. For 5 months, the case remained unsolved. Then, in February 1991, everything changed, not because of new evidence in the Healey case, but because of an unrelated arrest. Police arrested 20-year-old Christopher Ellis along with 2 friends, Gary Lawrence and David Lyles, for an unrelated attempted robbery. Detectives noticed Lawrence resembled one of their composite sketches and decided to question all 3 about the Healey murder. What followed was 18 hours of interrogation. Christopher Ellis was handcuffed to a bench. He was denied food, water, and sleep. Detectives lied to him, telling him he had already been identified, that his friends had implicated him, and that confessing would mean a lighter sentence. Eventually, exhausted and broken, Ellis signed a statement written largely by the detectives themselves. Lyles and Lawrence were interrogated separately and produced their own statements. But here's a disturbing truth. All 3 statements contradicted each other. They disagreed on the car. They disagreed on who fired the shot. None of them matched what eyewitnesses had actually described. It didn't matter. All 3 men were charged with murder. During a police lineup, none of the eyewitnesses identified Ellis by sight. So prosecutors tried something unusual. They asked Ellis to step forward and say the words, "Just do it," the exact phrase the shooter's accomplice had shouted that night. Based solely on the sound of his voice, witness Stephanie Shealy identified him. It would later be revealed that another witness, Cynthia Louis Saint, the woman who had the clearest view of the suspect that night, had actually told police that Ellis was not one of the men she saw. That information was never shared with the defense. In late 1992 and early 1993, Ellis, Lyles, and Lawrence were each tried separately and convicted of second-degree murder. Ellis was sentenced to 31.5 years to life. Lyles received 30 years to life. Lawrence received 32.5 years to life. 3 young men, still in their early 20s, were sent away for crimes they always insisted they did not commit. For the next 2 decades, their appeals failed. Their lives outside continued without them. Families changed. The world moved on, while they remained behind bars. Detective Richard Wells of the Nassau County Police Department led the investigation. Composite sketches were created from witness descriptions. A $15,000 reward was offered. Thousands of posters were plastered across the region. In 2016, a legal team began reinvestigating the case. They tracked down Cynthia Louis Saint, who confirmed she had excluded Ellis from her identification all along. Information prosecution had withheld for over 25 years. An expert in false confessions reviewed Ellis's interrogation and identified multiple red flag risk factors: sleep deprivation, isolation, and police use of false evidence. Then came an even larger discovery. Detective Wells's own case files contained leads pointing to other suspects entirely, including a man who had reportedly confessed to a friend that he and an accomplice were responsible for the robbery and shooting. None of this had ever reached the defense, the jury, or the public. For 5 months, the case remained unsolved. Then, in February 1991, everything changed, not because of new evidence in the Healy case, but because of an unrelated arrest. In July 2021, a judge vacated Christopher Ellis's conviction. David Lyles was released on parole that same year. In January 2023, Gary Lawrence's conviction was also vacated. But vacating a conviction doesn't mean acquittal. Both Ellis and Lawrence faced the possibility of being tried all over again. In January 2025, Christopher Ellis went to trial a second time. The jury acquitted him. In May 2026, Gary Lawrence faced his second trial. After just 90 minutes of deliberation, the jury found him not guilty on every charge. More than 3 decades after that night outside the Arby's, both men were finally completely free. Christopher Ellis and Gary Lawrence lost over 30 years of their lives to a system that prioritized a quick conviction over the truth. Their case stands as a sobering reminder of how coerced confessions, withheld evidence, and unreliable identifications can destroy innocent lives, and how long true justice can take to arrive. This has been the story of the Healy murder case.